Hi, my name's Greg Remke. I direct programs for economic thinking, and I'm going to try and record a brief sort of pitch for looking at public health and nutrition issues through a lens that market economists are used to in looking at misguided state and federal economic policies. So, nutrition, pandemic, public health, and how government funding has misguided people and led to poor metabolic health as it's led to poor economic health is the claim. I'll try and make it briefly, and mostly I'll be recommending research materials for people who want to follow up, learn more about it. So, a disturbed economy recovers. People misunderstand economic processes. Economic recessions have causes, and they have natural recovery processes. And this is discussed at great length in books, videos, articles. Some examples, government interventions, delay and distort recovery. After World War I, government didn't jump in, and the economy recovered very rapidly. The Great Depression, after the financial crisis, the stock market crash, government stepped in a big way with the New Deal, and the argument is this delayed recovery and caused the Great Depression to last so long. After World War II, the market responded. Similarly, after the Korean War, when Truman canceled the war contracts, the economy recovered. And after the Great Recession, the argument is the economy could have recovered, except under President Bush, President Obama, massive interventions in the economy, or large interventions that delayed. Now, I'm asserting this. Obviously, people who believe in government intervention say, gosh, if Roosevelt had only spent more, if Obama had only spent more, and maybe we'll see this as President Biden, spends more. But I'm going to shift gears from that discussion and show how there's a similar challenge in our metabolic health, the economy inside our body. Now, body to economy metaphors often fail. Leviathan, the idea is a great brain to manage the economy, and that we should think of the king as the head of the economy. But that's not going to work. There's no state liver or state pancreas to organize society. But you can argue that there are similar processes. The body can be seen as a self-ordering system with key associations and institutions. I put those in quotes to mean metabolic processes and or organs. The pancreas, the liver actually do have functions, and when they're disturbed, they don't work right. So here we are at the end. We hope the end of the pandemic, and the metabolic health is a big part of this. The most severe cases were with people who had poor metabolic health. The elderly, where the elderly have, weaker immune systems, but a big part of those elderly people who were sick, they weren't just sick, they had comorbidities. They had heart disease, diabetes, obesity. And critics of the status quo government interventions in nutrition say this is from eating the wrong foods that's caused decades of insulin resistance, poor metabolic health, chronic conditions, heart disease, obesity, type 2 diabetes, even Alzheimer's, considered type 3 diabetes. And so in a sense, here's why people who care about free market economics and government misguided interventions that's damaged the U.S. economy or economies around the world, the reason why economic freedom matters. Here's something related with government intervention in the nutritional guidelines. Federal government interventions delay and distort recovery after recessions and lockdowns. Similar federal nutrition interventions in research, interventions in setting the federal guidelines, the panic after Eisenhower had his heart attacks, and the push of the food pyramid and later the food plate to lower the fat in our diet. These public health interventions, critics say, caused and contributed to insulin resistance, poor metabolic health, and these soaring chronic conditions. We're not going to be able to fix the economy and avoid permanent pandemic-related lockdowns unless we fix the majority of the American population's poor metabolic health, which is tied to what they eat, how often they eat, and tied to the federal guidelines that make things worse. So, nutrition for a healthy immune system. Economists disagree on the nutrition side. So, market process economists should be familiar with this. Most economic departments, teach students about market failure, promote market or government interventions, antitrust law, all these different things that make things worse, critics say. Similarly, medical and nutrition researchers disagree. The nutrition departments in universities are controlled by, the interventionists or the people who call for particular ideology related to what people eat. And they disagree over the basics of the metabolic process. So they're saying, look, heavy people need to exercise more and eat less. They need to have less saturated fats, whole grain bread, fruits, vegetables, many small meals, 8 times a day, snacks. But the other side says, no, eat more meat, eat healthy fats, avoid PUFAs, polyunsaturated vegetable or seed oils, eat once a day, twice a day, fast. That's very different advice than the mainstream. So Georgia Ede is one who looks at this, argues that much of the increasing mental health among college students and others is tied to our modern diets. The modern mental health crisis is tied to what we eat. So just as people are saying, look, the COVID is causing people to be mentally ill, maybe mental illness contributed to COVID through diet. There's many documentaries, disagreeing, just like documentaries do in economics. This one, Fat Fiction, takes the low-carb approach, the keto approach to improving our metabolic health and social health. My brief pitch is to, do your own research. I'm not a doctor, a nutrition researcher. I'm an economics researcher, mostly on debate topics. But here's a bunch of organizations that work on these things. Nutrition Coalition is the sort of trying to change the federal guidelines. Fat Fiction, the movie, gives you an overview. You can see the trailer online. Low Carb Down Under videos. This is a nutritional research or medical research association for doctors. They have conferences. You can see the presentations on YouTube. You can listen to Diet Doctor podcasts where they interview various doctors and nutrition researchers. And these are all medical doctors trying to be very careful in laying out the argument for changing our diet, going back to what used to be the normal diet, which today would be called low carb. But before the federal government interventions, that's what most people ate. They had whole fat, dairy, butter, cheese, meat, and then they got pushed by the government into these low fat diets that critics say caused or contributed to obesity, diabetes, other problems. Again, there's much disagreement about this, but again, economists should be used to that. Here's the Society of Metabolic Health Practitioners who are focusing on metabolic health. This is not something most doctors know about. They're not taught this in college, and they rely on the nutritionists to do these things, but the nutritionists are captured by the sort of Keynesian school of nutritional science. You can read more. Low Carb USA has interviews. I've been posting on this, and again, I'm trying to link to videos, articles, research that makes this case. Diet Doctor. Again, I'm not advocating you go on a diet. I'm not a doctor. I'm going to argue you should research nutrition. That's what I did as I thought I was on the path to type 2 diabetes that my father had and was overweight. I began researching this stuff. It changed the way I ate. Didn't take a lot of willpower. When you eat more healthy fats and less carbs, you lose your cravings. These doctors talk about these things. Ideally, we'd know what our metabolic health is. We'd have continuous glucose monitors or monitor our sweat to figure out whether our metabolic system is booming and crashing from eating too much carbs and insulin. But you can read about this theory of insulin resistance and the different people who speak about it, the research on it. And so do your own research, and thank you. and there's movies about it, videos. Diet Doctor, you can see a whole range of movies, and there's movies against meat, saying we all ought to eat vegetables, we ought to be vegan for ethical reasons, environmental reasons, nutritional reasons. It's, I guess, fun to have a debate on these things, and that's my pitch.